There's an old saying in the Wasteland: war never changes. Humanity's progress was defined by our conflicts over land, over ideas, and finally over the resources needed to fuel that very progress. On October 23, 2077, the Great War reached its climax, and nuclear fire rolled across the planet. It took only a single day to wipe human civilization from the Earth, and nearly humanity itself. Our weapons had become terrifyingly powerful, but war never changes. In the years since, the survivors were caught in a constant struggle against the horrors of mutation and radiation, beset by the rising tide of barbarism and authoritarian remnants, utilizing technology from the old world in an attempt to conquer the new. A new tune and new dance partners. But war never changes. In the Capital Wasteland, one such conflict pitted the Enclave from Raven Rock against the forces of Elder Lyon's Brotherhood of Steel to secure the technology of Project Purity and the promise of clean drinking water, and all of the power and influence that comes with it. Ending in the destruction of the Enclave at Adams Air Force Base, it appeared that yet another bloody chapter of human conflict had come to a close, again without our species learning any meaningful lessons. Or had it? Fleeing the destruction, a single damaged vertebrate struggled to maintain altitude as it crossed over the broken landscape. It unknowingly headed to a date with destiny, nearly 200 years in the making.
Obstruction eliminated. Ground units initiate directive 7395. Destroy all communists. We will not fear the Red Menace.
Colonel Augustus Autumn, Enclave military commander, didn't remember much. He'd been aboard their command crawler when the bastards from the Brotherhood of Steel had launched a full-scale assault on Adams Air Force Base. The last thing he recalled was a bright light and a huge explosion, and not much else after but a series of broken images. He thought he had been on a vertebrate, hearing the frantic calls of the pilot while others hovered over him. Later there were explosions and maybe a crash? He couldn't tell. He only felt himself being dragged along the ground, then gunfire and screams, and then nothing more. Out of the inky blackness of unconsciousness, he felt himself rising towards a dim light. Somewhere he could hear voices, but nothing that made sense to him. Floating for what seemed forever, it might have only been hours or even minutes, he slowly awoke to his body aching from head to toe. Only with the greatest of efforts was he able to open his eyes. He blinked several times before his surroundings came into focus. Autumn was in some kind of bed in a small rustic room, lit by a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. On a side table was a medical scanner, and he was hooked up to several IVs attached to his arms, which were both swathed in bandages. His right leg was also in a cast and elevated in a makeshift sling. On the other side of the bed was an empty chair, and there were several taxidermied heads of animals adorning the walls. He recognized a few of them, but there were mutated beasts the likes of which he'd never seen before, and would have preferred not to be less than a half a mile away with an artillery battalion between him and them. In one corner of the room was a small bureau. On top, neatly folded, was his coat, and what looked like the rest of his uniform. Though they throbbed, gentle experimentation proved that he was able to move his arms, and feeling at his face and head confirmed that they were also covered almost completely with more bandages. Autumn had no idea where he was or how long he had been here, but he was at least glad to be alive. From beyond the closed wood door, he could hear the voices in what he assumed was the next room. Feeling weak and sore, and maybe a little hungry as well, Autumn was anxious to meet and thank his benefactors, and then find out what had happened to him and his men. There was a soft click and the doorknob turned slowly before the door opened. A figure backed into the room carrying a large tray. Turning around into the light, Autumn saw that it was a ghoul woman in a laundered dress. He didn't know who was more surprised, he or the woman, seeing him awake.
Oh, I didn't realize you were up.
Autumn didn't know what to say, or whether or not his voice was up to saying anything at all. Ghouls were, well, dangerous. The Enclave's position was, and always had been for as long as anyone could remember, that ghouls, supermutants, and the other abominations of the Wasteland needed to be eliminated. The ghoul woman could see both the confusion and a bit of fear in the patient's eyes. It was the typical reaction from most normal folks, so she smiled and put the tray down on the small side table.
It's okay. You're safe.
She reached down and put her hand on Autumn's arm. He flinched at her touch, then grimaced as his movement sent a painful spasm up his arm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Well, I get it. But you're still pretty badly hurt, so try to avoid sudden movements. I can bring you some water and food if you feel up to it.
Autumn felt conflicted. Of course he knew that not all ghouls were feral, but the Enclave viewed them all as abominations to be exterminated, shot on sight. But looking around, he didn't have much of a choice at the moment, so he just nodded.
Okay then, I'll be right back. Oh, by the way, the name's Abigail, but everyone just calls me Abby.
Watching the ghoul leave the room, Autumn took another look around. What he had thought was a bureau was actually an old bookcase. In the faint light of the room, he couldn't make out many of the titles, but he saw a very old copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Strategy by Lytle Hart, and a complete collection of the U.S. Covert Operations manuals. He was still getting his bearings when Abby came back into the room with another tray, this time with a glass of water and a small plate of food.
Here you go. If you don't mind, I'm gonna help you up, so you can eat. Is that okay?
She appeared to be mindful of his first reaction to her, and waited for him to respond. Autumn nodded. He felt a little guilty, considering she must have been watching over him for quite some time. Abby helped prop Autumn up, careful not to put too much pressure on his bandaged wounds, and gave him a few sips of water. That alone was enough to make him start to feel a bit better. She took a step back and let her patient eat. For the first time in a very long time, Autumn bit into fresh bread and ate fresh vegetables. It was a sight better than the military rations they'd been forced to eat after the destruction of Raven Rock. Almost as quickly as he started, the plate was empty. Abby smiled and took it, while also taking a napkin and dabbing the sides of Autumn's lips and brushing the crumbs from his bandages.
Should I give compliments to the chef?
That forced Autumn to crack a bit of a smile. If the ghoul could make a joke, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Taking another sip of water, Autumn finally felt strong enough to speak.
How did I get here?
Oh, so you can talk. Some of us wondered if you might be one of those feral humans. Sorry, a bit of ghoul humor. Here, let me sit down.
She pulled up the old wooden chair next to the bed.
You've been here for a few weeks now, and you weren't alone either. There was one other man, but he died a couple of days after you arrived. He was badly wounded, and there was nothing we could really do for him. He said a little, but not much of it made sense. I'm sorry.
What happened?
Your vertibird crashed a few miles from here. I guess your friend dragged you a fair ways from the wreckage, and then you ran into some raiders. That's when your friend got hurt, protecting you, we figure. We saw the smoke and heard the gunfire, and the mayor took some folks out and found you. Killed all those raiders, too. Got you both back here and tried to patch you up the best we could. You had some pretty bad burns, that broken leg, and a lot of cuts. A miracle you survived it all, really. You've got folks talking. It's been quite a while since the last time we got any visitors. Well, visitors we didn't already know.
Autumn tried to put the pieces together in his head, but it was all still a blur. So instead, he asked the next obvious question.
Where am I?
Well, you're in, actually just outside of what people used to call Appalachia. Now everyone just calls it the Ultrasite Wastes. Our little town here is a safe haven. You don't like ghouls, do you?
Autumn was just about to say something when Abby held up her hand.
Nah, I get it. I wasn't always a ghoul, you know. We know what most folks think about us.
I mean...
It's okay, really. And if we wanted to hurt you, we wouldn't have gone through all the trouble to fix you up.
Sorry.
You don't need to apologize, really. Now, I get to ask you a question. You know my name. What's yours?
Autumn looked at Abby. He weighed what to tell her. To lie or to tell the truth. Finally, he decided to land somewhere in between.
Autumn. Name's Autumn.
Autumn. Okay, then. Folks here will be glad to know you're awake. Like I said before, you're pretty banged up, and I'm still concerned about that leg of yours. So don't get any funny ideas about running out on us. 'Cause you wouldn't get very far anyway. Sorry, bad joke.
Autumn smiled, just a little. The bandages made it hard and he was still adjusting to his new reality. For the past year, he'd gone from one disaster to another, from Raven Rock to DC to Adams Air Force Base. And now he was sitting in bed having what would pass for a casual conversation with a ghoul.
The mayor wanted to be here when you woke up, but she's out negotiating a contract with one of the regional caravans. Trade is the lifeblood of this place, if you can believe it. And the mayor's got plenty of experience. You just missed her, in fact, but she'll be back in a week or so.
It was a lot for Autumn to digest. At the moment, he felt very lucky to be alive, even if he was surrounded by ghouls.
Well, it's just about time for your next dose of pain meds. It's a local concoction, but I tell you, it's some of the best medicine you can find anywhere. You need your rest. We can talk more tomorrow, okay?
Autumn nodded again and watched as Abby injected something into his IV line and left the room. He'd keep putting the pieces together and figure out what would come next. At the moment, at least, he was happy to lay back and drift into the muddy darkness, at least confident that he would wake up again.
Hi, I'm Aaron,
And I'm Ariel.
and we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, a podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora.
And all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on the Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.
Over the next week, Autumn started to feel a bit more like his old self. He toyed with the idea of trying to escape, but the reality of his situation made that impossible.
Now, joking or not, she's right. I can't run away on a broken leg.
And despite his ingrained and heretofore unquestioned bias against ghouls, Autumn had to admit that Abby made a fine nurse. She was there first thing in the morning with his breakfast, then carefully checked and changed his bandages. Given the circumstances, he could have done a lot worse, and it surprised him to feel that way.
These burns are healing nicely. Not much I can do about the scarring, though.
Well, it comes with the territory.
I bet it does. How does your leg feel?
It doesn't hurt quite as much. Maybe I'll be able to put some weight on it soon.
Don't rush it. It was a bad break, but I promise we'll get you out and about. I know the others would like to meet you. Like I said, we don't get too many visitors around here.
While he was bedridden, Autumn took the opportunity to peruse the small stack of books that Abby would fetch from the bookshelf upon request. Abby had mentioned that the settlement had an extensive library, well stocked from different parts of the wasteland from over the years, but Autumn tended to stick to the ones already in his room. Most of those were old volumes of world history, centered around military conflicts and political strife, while the others were a selection of biographies from famous leaders throughout the ages.
Just who do all these belong to, Abby? Mighty peculiar collection of reading materials here.
They're part of the mayor's private collection. She thought they might be of interest to you. I tried reading them a while back, but they were definitely not my cup of tea.
Flipping through an autobiography of Winston Churchill, Autumn grew even more curious about this ghoul mayor, given her choice of reading materials. Extremely rare, one would normally only find books like this in the collection of a few select elites like himself.
I can't even hazard a guess where your mayor would have gotten all of these. It's a unique collection.
When you live as long as we do, you tend to accumulate things, especially old things. The mayor, well, she's fairly unique herself. But you can ask her when you see her.
Autumn closed the book and handed it back to Abby. He was still trying to make sense of this new little world he had found himself in, and he had a lot more questions than answers. But for the moment, he was alive, and that was good enough. The next day, Abby brought Autumn his first set of visitors. After they had finished breakfast, he was introduced to some of the other residents of the settlement. There was Harold, an older ghoul who described himself as the town blacksmith, Judy and Nell, a ghoul couple who had repaired his uniform and coat after he had first arrived, the material having been torn in several places from the crash, and John, a ghoul visiting from another town far to the south, who had stopped by and dropped off a perfectly preserved pie as a gift.
I hope you like it, Mr. Autumn. I make it a point to check all the old vending machines. It can be a bit frustrating seeing that darn claw hand keep missing, but every once in a while I get lucky. And I'll tell ya, nothing better than a big mouthful of perfectly preserved pie.
Much obliged, John, and thank you for the gift. Abby, you wouldn't mind splitting this with me, would you?
Of course. I've had a few before. They are edible. Mostly.
It helps to have ghoul gut, doesn't it, Abby? Anyway, I was hoping the mayor would be in. Got a few choice bits of intel for her.
She's still away, but she'll be back soon enough. Got somewhere you need to be?
Nah, I can wait. Well, it was good to meet you, Mr. Autumn. Enjoy the pie.
The ghoul tipped his hat, then turned and left the room. Abby closed the door behind him, then turned to find Autumn giving her a look.
What?
Sorry. This is all so normal.
Is normal bad?
For someone like me, it's been a long time since I had a reminder of what normal was.
The mayor has a saying, if you borrow trouble, that debt always comes due. We just want to be left alone, live our lives, and, yeah, be normal. We're not monsters.
Autumn was embarrassed. He had lost count of the number of degenerates, mutants, and ghouls he'd ordered to be killed as part of the Enclave's plan to restore order to the Wasteland. It had been easy. They weren't human. That's what he had been told. What he had always told himself.
Anyway, this is about as normal as things can get. So, why don't I get us a couple of plates and we can both experience the absolute pleasure of that perfectly preserved pie.
I think I'd like that, Abby. I really would.
Abby smiled and went to the kitchen, taking the pie with her. As Autumn watched her leave, his mind felt at war with itself. He didn't know which side would eventually come out on top, but when Abby returned with 2 plates and the pie, he pushed it all aside and tried to embrace a new meaning to the word normal. In the middle of his second week awake, Autumn began to feel a bit antsy. Confined as he was to his small bedroom, he wanted to get out and about, to at least get his bearings, and also some fresh air at the same time.
Come on, Abby. I'm feeling a lot better.
All right. But that leg still needs some healing. Let me see what I can find.
Abby left the small cottage and returned a bit later with an old wheelchair.
Really, Abby?
Take it or leave it, Mr. Autumn. You're one lucky devil getting me as your personal escort.
I guess I'm lucky. Fine if it means finally getting a bit of mobility back. I'll suffer the indignity forced upon me.
Abby laughed and helped Autumn out of his bed, careful to avoid putting any pressure on his broken leg, before helping him settle into the wheelchair.
Not bad. About as comfortable as the captain's chair on the command crawler.
The what?
Oh, nothing. Sorry.
Abby got behind the wheelchair and pushed Autumn out of the room, giving him his first real look at the rest of the small house he had occupied for the past several weeks. There was a small living room with chairs arrayed around a fireplace, with an adjacent kitchen. A set of stairs went up to the second floor, where Abby had set up a temporary bedroom for herself. But the lack of personal decor prompted a question.
Wait, is that not your house?
Nope. My place is a couple streets over. It's a real mess right now. I was in the middle of some experiments when I had to drop everything and take care of you. There are wires, circuit boards, all kinds of doodads all over. I'd be so embarrassed for anyone to see it.
It can't be that bad.
You have no idea. There are a few things I've been working on for, I don't know, maybe 20 years now.
2 decades. Really?
Ghouls don't tend to think of time the same way you folks do. It gives us a uniquely long-term outlook.
I hadn't really considered that, but I guess it makes sense.
Anyway, this is one of our guest houses. The town's population has varied over the years. Ghouls come and go. Sometimes they stay for a few years and then they leave. And some of us, well, this will always be our home.
Abby's expression grew wistful as she spoke. Her mind turned to days long past. But she shook her head and gave Autumn a smile before pushing him outside.
Autumn, welcome to Ever After. Though plenty of folks just call it home.
Autumn held up his hand against the bright light of the early afternoon sun. As his eyes adjusted, he took in his surroundings and was heartily surprised, again by just how normal it was. The settlement residents were just going on with their lives, picking up potatoes and moot fruit from the bins in front of the general store, perusing clothing at the tailor, while others were gathered around the window of the bakery as the latest confections were up for display. They could have been scenes out of any settlement in the Wasteland, or if not for the bizarre produce, even a particularly rural pre-war town, except everyone in sight was a ghoul.
Abby, just how long have you folks been here?
Over 200 years.
That long? How? Why?
You know why. As to the how, well, when the first folks turned right after the war, people were scared. Scared of things they didn't know. Things that were different. To them, ghouls were just monsters. They couldn't tell the difference between us and ferals, so they just decided to kill us all. A few of those first ghouls managed to escape. I found this place up in the hills, far away from anyone. A place where they could start a new life. They left clues, a few went out and let other ghouls hear, and me, like I said, it was just luck that I ended up here.
Abby, I'm sorry.
Like I say, this is our home. There are other ghoul settlements, and not all folks see us as monsters, but it ain't all that safe out there for our kind. So we stay up here, and like the mayor always says, we protect our family.
Autumn sat back as Abby wheeled him around the settlement. It was all so much to take in, and a change to his entire view of the world. The Enclave had always seen itself as on the right side of history, that they would be the ones to bring order from the chaos and rid the wasteland of the abominations, and restore the country, humanity, to its former glory. And yet, what had he really accomplished?
Cap for your thoughts?
It's nice.
Well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Abby continued to push Autumn around, taking him down Main Street, past a series of shops and the settlement restaurant.
That's the Stein and Dine. Well, not the original one, but one of our traders liked it so much, he ended up opening his own franchise, so to speak. Great food and beer, if you're ever so inclined. And over there is Ethan's general store. Pretty good for whatever odds and ends you might need.
As Abby continued the tour, Autumn took stock of the settlement as a whole. The entire town was built in the hollow of a large hill, overlooking a heavily wooded valley. Perhaps it was just his military mind kicking into gear, but whoever had chosen this spot had done well. Not only were they well hidden, but the entire town could be defended by a much smaller force than its size might have suggested. He couldn't see much of the horizon from here, as the hills around them and the settlement walls blocked most of the view. But he did catch a glimpse of the horizon to the south, covered in some kind of purple haze. It was the same haze he had once spotted far off on the horizon when he had been at Raven Rock.
The rest is mostly residential housing. We have a bandstand over there for parties and town meetings, and we talked about building an honest-to-goodness town hall, but the mayor keeps putting it off. I think she just prefers working out of her house, to be honest. She might have the title, but she doesn't stand much on pomp and circumstance. Says she's allergic to public speaking.
She sounds very practical. And since I seem to owe her for saving my life, I'm looking forward to thanking her in person.
Feels like you two might have a lot in common.
What do you mean by that?
Just a feeling.
Abby gave Autumn a wink, then turned the wheelchair back towards the guest house. He was getting tired, and he probably could have asked 1,000 more questions, but his bandages needed changing, and his leg was getting sore. As the sun began to set behind the hills, Autumn found his thoughts drifting to other places, other times, and the questions he continued to ask himself.
What is the true measure of a man? Is it in his words, or is it in his deeds?
Hey everybody, my name is Crawford Smith and I am the owner of Smith's 3D Prints LLC. We are a 3D printing service company that is dedicated to providing you with high quality 3D prints in both resin and filament. We print anything from dice towers to custom D&D figures and cosplay. Located in 44 Pennsylvania, let us know what we can print for you. Follow us on Facebook and join our Discord. Are you looking for more information? Look us up at smiths3dprints.com or give us a call at 570-991-0277. Thank you so much.
Autumn and Abby had settled into a familiar routine. She would bring him breakfast in the morning, then change his dressings and check his leg before bringing out the wheelchair to make their rounds of the town. Autumn was surprised at how quickly he became accustomed to the company of ghouls, chatting with Judith the baker about her favorite eclair recipe, and just the previous evening, drinking his first batch of genuine moonshine at the Stein and Dine. He knew ghouls didn't normally require real food, but the folks in Ever After enjoyed living as normal lives as they were able, and alcohol? Well, alcohol worked just as well on ghouls as it did with everyone else, including himself, as he woke up the next day with quite the hangover. Abby let him sleep in, but he had to eventually come in to remove his bandages for the last time.
All right. Just let me unwrap your arms first.
As the wrappings were removed, he could see the crisscross scars and healed burns, but overall it wasn't too bad, not in light of what he had gone through anyway. It was his face that he was more concerned about.
And here we go. Might sting just a little, but hey, not too bad at all. Here, let me get you a mirror.
Abby reached over to the side table and picked up a mirror. In a small note of synchronicity, it was the same mirror in which she had seen her own transformation. She handed it to Autumn, who held it up and looked.
Not so bad now, is it? Still the most handsome smooth skin in the settlement, right?
I'm the only smooth skin in the settlement, Abby.
Exactly.
Autumn had become accustomed to Abby's unique sense of humor, and it had helped to break any remaining tension between them. As he looked at his face, Autumn had prepared for the worst, but now that he had seen it properly, he breathed a sigh of relief. Although one side of his face was scarred with burns, it wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been, and the other cuts and abrasions had healed with almost no scarring at all. Of course, he also now spotted a full beard as well, and if he hadn't known better, he looked almost like a new man.
Maybe I am.
What was that, Autumn?
Just admiring the new me. Not bad at all, actually.
Abby helped him get cleaned up and gave him some healing salves to put on his arms, just in case. Afterwards, he and Abby ate together, and he settled in for another day of reading and watching the sun travel across the sky. It was in these quiet times that he thought back to those desperate days in the Capital Wasteland. Everything they'd done, so many lives lost. And he had to consider, were all of those people on the other side so different than he was? Autumn had been reading through one of the mayor's old books, a history of the Napoleonic Wars. It had always been a favorite topic of his during his time at Raven Rock. President Eden himself had extensive files, along with key additions, but this one was different. Someone had written notes in the margins, underlined certain passages. It was like a running commentary, many of them nearly illegible with age, but there was a page which had been folded down and a quote underlined.
Well, next to a battle lost, the greatest misery is a battle gained.
It was one of Wellington's great quotes, attributed to him after the Battle of Waterloo. In the margins, someone had written,
Do not mourn the dead, honor them, but mourn for those who must live with what they have done.
Autumn set the book down and turned his gaze to the window, and those words kept echoing through his mind. A few days later, Autumn finally convinced Abby to find him a set of crutches and let him hobble out on his own. Though on his own was relative, as Abby kept a careful watch as he made his first tentative steps outside.
Don't even think about running away, mister.
Wouldn't dream of it. Well, maybe a little.
You rascal.
Not that Autumn hadn't thought about leaving, but he was in no condition to travel, nor did he have any idea where he'd go or what he'd do. There was also the little matter of the Brotherhood of Steel. If they even suspected he was still alive, there would likely be an enormous price on his head. Instead, he used his newfound freedom to limp down the street to the bakery, where the smell of fresh bread was calling to him. When he crossed the threshold, he was greeted by Judith, the baker, who was busying herself kneading large pieces of dough and placing them on racks.
Why, hello there, Mr. Autumn. It's such a pleasure to see you out and about. I see you lost your chaperone.
Yes, indeed. I finally got myself out from under Abby's thumb.
Judith went back to kneading a large pile of dough as they chatted.
Oh, she can be quite the taskmaster.
Really? I find that hard to believe.
Deputy Mayor keeps things running like clockwork around here when the mayor's away. Not to mention, she's the best tinkerer any of us has ever seen.
Well, she did mention her place was a mess with all kinds of inventions and projects.
I think mess might be a bit of an overstatement, but she's always working on something. Right now, I suspect you're her current project.
Oh, she's just taking care of me is all. I mean, she is a nurse too, right?
Nurse? Oh, heavens no.
But wait,
Oh, don't get the wrong idea. She has the skills, but she absolutely hates the sight of blood.
well, then why?
Why you? Well, I guess there isn't any harm in it. Just don't go blathering either, would ya?
The Scout's honor, Judith.
I can accept that. Did I ever tell you I was a pioneer scout back before the war? Got all my baking merit badges too.
I'm not surprised. But you were talking about Abby. Me being her pet project.
It's not like that. You see, this place, we don't think it's an accident that folks end up here. Smooth skin or otherwise. You're not our first by a long stretch. Something seems to bring them here. Folks that need a home, a family, or just a place to rest. And sometimes, even someone who maybe needs a little fixing.
Autumn looked down at his crutches.
Getting better ain't just about getting right in the body, Mr. Autumn. It's about getting right with who you are. Abby had just lost the life she had. she lost hope. This place gave her purpose. And over time, it helped her come to terms with what had happened to her.
I can only imagine how hard that must have been.
You don't know the half of it. For us, we learned to take the good with the bad. And we've seen more than our fair share of both. But Abby, she's something special. When things were at their worst, Abby went back to Appalachia and helped those folks. Did things I don't think anyone else could have done. And if you could believe it, she helped save the world.
Save the world? That's a story I need to hear.
Judith stopped kneading and looked embarrassed.
Oh, I think I've said more than I intended. The point was, Abby found herself again, and she found something to believe in. The whole world got broken, Mr. Autumn, and that goes for most everyone in it, more or less. I think Abby wants to help you too, just like we helped her. Pay it forward.
Autumn's curiosity was piqued. He couldn't recall much from the Enclave archives regarding Appalachia, other than there had been some kind of installation there, along with a research facility or two, but contact had been lost ages ago, and there had always been bigger fish to fry, and then they had lost Poseidon. The conversation drifted to more mundane matters, like the consistency of the bread and showing off a new cake recipe Judith was going to try out when the mayor got back. It was just another bit of quiet mundane life that Autumn had rarely, if ever, experienced. Leaving the bakery, Autumn limped along in the direction of the blacksmith shop. But before he got there, he saw a small outbuilding he hadn't noticed before. It looked like a shack, but to his trained eye he could tell it was something more. There was a sturdy metal door and several locks, and it seemed out of place. Thinking about it, he couldn't remember seeing a lock anywhere else. Autumn turned and started to hobble over, but he heard a voice behind him before he could get close enough.
There you are, Autumn. Sorry, but that's off limits.
Off limits?
That's the mayor's private storage. She's real particular about her privacy. No one's supposed to mess around with it when she's not around.
Autumn glanced at the shed, then back to Abby.
Okay, sorry, I just thought I would take a look. I'm sure you understand.
I think we've all been curious at one time or another. I mean, what else are we gonna do, right? But when the mayor says something is off limits, she means it. And it means she has a good reason for it. You can always ask her when she gets back. I have a good guess, but who knows? She can be awfully squirrely sometimes.
Their conversation was interrupted by a flare rising above the tree line.
Oh, great. That's our caravan. Come on, I can't wait for you to meet them.
Autumn looked at the flare as the whole settlement was set abuzz. Ghouls were on their stoops and gathered in the streets before all heading towards the main gate. Abby helped Autumn navigate through the throng.
Folks always get excited when the traders get back. Especially this one.
Why this one?
Don't worry, you'll see.
They arrived at the front gate, which swung open, revealing nearly a dozen Brahmin, all piled high with boxes and crates, being led by a ghoul wearing an outside Ushenka hat and old caravan garb. The crowd cheered and Abby jogged out to meet the returning trader, with Autumn coming along slowly on his crutches. Abby gave the trader a big hug, then put her arm on her shoulder and turned around.
Eugenie, I'd like you to meet Mr. Autumn. He's a lot more mobile now since the last time you saw him. Autumn, this is Eugenie, probably our best trader.
Eugenie smiled and held out her hand.
Oh, hush you. But doesn't that beat all? Glad to see you among the living, Mr. Autumn. I hope Abby here has been keeping you in good company.
Autumn took the offered hand.
Very nice to meet you, Eugenie. Abby has been quite the host, nurse, and tour guide, and the hospitality has been excellent.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm sure Abby told you we don't get too many guests around here, especially ones that fall out of the sky on our doorstep.
So I've been told. Seems quite the feat, being mayor and leading caravans. Abby said you were negotiating.
Mayor? Me? I can tinker with the best of them, and keep the caravan in line, but I'll leave the big headaches to her. Speaking of, Abby, I picked up a surprise bonus. Look who I ran into coming up the hill.
Eugenie pointed back towards the rear of the caravan. Emerging from out behind the last Brahmin was another ghoul, this one wearing a hunter's long coat and cowboy hat. As she walked closer, Autumn could see the woman also had an eye patch and a series of scars on her face, framed by bluish-black hair cut neatly around chin length, unusual for a ghoul. She also had a service rifle slung over her shoulder and a long knife strapped to her hip. Eugenie jogged to meet the newcomer, throwing her arms around the other woman's neck and giving her a big kiss. Then putting her arm around her shoulder, Eugenie walked her past the other caravan traders and guards, right up to Abby and Autumn.
Looks like a day of introductions. Autumn, I'd like you to meet my wife, Val, otherwise known as Mrs. Mayor, when she feels like it.
Eugenie noticed Val was looking Autumn up and down with a steely glare, and then elbowed her.
Hey now, don't be rude, honey.
Val blinked and turned her stone face into a smile.
My apologies, Mr. Autumn. Old habits die hard, if they die at all. It's good to meet you properly and better to see you up and around.
Thank you. I was told I had you to thank for me still being amongst the living.
Autumn shook her hand and was impressed with the firm grip. There was also a look in her eye, something he'd only seen in older veterans. His father had once referred to it as the 1,000-yard stare. He could only imagine the things this ghoul must have seen.
It's been a very long time since any of us had seen a vertibird, Mr. Autumn. I'm sorry we weren't able to save the rest of your men. By the time we got to the crash site, the raiders had already killed most of them, but we took them by surprise. It wasn't much of a fight after that.
Raiders are always a problem.
They've learned the hard way to leave us alone. Honestly, I was surprised they'd make the effort. It was almost like they were looking for something.
Autumn couldn't tell if that last part was a question or a subtly pointed statement. But before they could continue, their small group was mobbed by the rest of the townsfolk. Everyone was happy to see both of their returning heroes, Eugenie with a fresh load of supplies and caps, while the mayor was bringing a big announcement of her own. The mayor raised her hand and spoke above the noise of the crowd.
Pipe down a minute, folks. I have some great news from the Blue Ridge Caravan. They've agreed to extend our contract for another 3 years.
Seems like we got a lot to celebrate. Plus, our guest is now up and about. I think it's time we show him some ever-after hospitality. Don't you think?
Not that we need an excuse for a party, but this sounds like a really special event. Okay, everyone, tonight we celebrate. Y'all know what to do, so go ahead and get started.
Autumn watched the crowd cheer one last time before dispersing to head back into town, or help Eugenie manage all the work of a caravan arrival. He felt a familiar itch between his shoulder blades and turned to find the mayor watching him again with her lone dark eye, before Eugenie grabbed her arm and took her into another embrace, pulling her into the settlement.
Just who is she?
Autumn felt a measure of uncertainty. It was possible that the mayor, this Val, knew who he was. They weren't that far from the Capital Wasteland, and news about what had happened could have reached even this isolated location. And there was his reputation, and what he had done. However, if that was the case, then there would have been no reason for these people, and now he was thinking of them as just people, not ghouls, not anymore, to have treated him with such dignity and respect.
Not that there is much I can do about it anyway, in my condition.
Autumn filed away those questions for later, as all of the excitement and hobbling around had tired him out. So he headed back to the small guest house to lie down. Abby waved to him as he limped by, as she chatted with Judith on the selection of desserts for the night's festivities. Placing his crutches in the corner, Autumn limped over to the bed. He was asleep almost as soon as his head hit the pillow.
Ever get so lost in your favorite game that the day slips by unnoticed? Do you need audio dramas and gaming pods to get you through the day till you can jump back in game? You're not alone. I'm inviting you to join me as we dive into a world of immersive lore and gameplay on my shows The Fallout Feed, Starfield Lorecast, and Dames Who Game, plus all the shows we do on the ASA Podcasting Network. On the Fallout feed, we celebrate the world of Fallout and occasionally other RPGs, where rad roaches are far from the only bugs you'll encounter, and there's always a new way to tackle a quest. For Starfield fans, join me on the Lorecast. And on Dames Who Game, join me and my girls as we mix games, nerdy media, makeup, and our latest obsessions. With these and other shows at ASA Podcasting, we believe the best way to experience a game is to dive deep. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, you name it. ASA Podcasting, your next adventure starts here.
Autumn opened his eyes in a panic. He had been back at the Jefferson Memorial, but this time they'd won. The Brotherhood of Steel Knights lay broken and bloody at his feet, while Enclave soldiers activated Project Purity. But instead of clean water, it was a rising tide of more blood, spreading throughout the wasteland, killing everything it touched. And all the while, he could only stare, letting it happen. He shook his head, trying to drive those images from his mind.
Damn you, Eden.
President Eden, the AI which had controlled Raven Rock and acted as the titular head of the Enclave. Autumn had let the computer act as a convenient figurehead, while they plotted their own conquest of the wasteland. It had all gone wrong when Eden revealed his own plan to unleash a virus into the water supply, designed to cull all of the mutated creatures and plants.
It was never my goal to rule over a barren world. It would have killed everyone and everything.
Autumn finally sat up in bed. He could hear the party preparations outside, then found a note left beside his bed, on top of a folded set of clothes.
Autumn, figured you might like something nice to wear to the party. I think they'll even fit. See you at 6 p.m. in the square. Don't be late. Signed, Abby.
Autumn smiled and picked up the pile. It was just a set of casual wear with a patched jacket.
Not exactly a tuxedo, but that's not really the style around here. I think this will do just fine.
Checking the clock on the wall, Autumn saw he had just enough time to get cleaned up and changed before he was due outside. Glancing out the window, he could see the town was still a beehive of activity, as schools walked past with tables, chairs, and even musical instruments. Not wanting to be late, Autumn looked over to the bathroom before slowly changing into his new set of clothes. It appeared that Abby had thought of everything, including adjusting the pant leg so that it would fit neatly over his cast. His leg was feeling better, and he'd probably be able to get the cast off soon. Once he was well again, he would need to decide what to do next. Autumn knew he couldn't stay here, even if he wanted to.
Well, the mayor might have been onto something. Maybe those raiders were looking for me personally. And if so, it means I could be putting this place in danger.
Autumn blinked a bit at his own words. Not long ago, he would have ordered this whole settlement burned to the ground and everyone inside killed as abominations. Now he wanted to protect them. It was still a feeling he struggled to truly understand. Or maybe he was struggling to understand how he'd held on to his previous beliefs in the first place. Abby slowly opened the door and found Autumn buttoning up the last buttons on his shirt.
Sorry to intrude, but I didn't want you to be late. You are the guest of honor, you know.
I'm the only guest. Sounds like y'all have a lot to celebrate more than little old me.
Don't sell yourself short. You've made quite the impression on folks around here. In fact, I was telling the mayor all about it.
Oh, really? Is she curious or suspicious?
Maybe a bit of both. But she always has the community's best interests at heart. She's protected this place for a really long time, and never does anything without a good reason and a lot of consideration.
I'd love the opportunity to talk to her, both to thank her again for saving me and maybe answering a few questions.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for that. But tonight we celebrate. Now come on, you're my escort for the evening, and I expect punctuality.
Yes, ma'am.
Autumn took a final moment to run a comb through his hair before grabbing his crutches, allowing Abby to put her arm around his. Then they both walked out of the front door and into a full-fledged party. Sure enough, there was a band playing on a makeshift stage toward the rear of the town square. Long tables filled with food and drink, and even an area reserved for dancing.
We don't do anything halfway around here. Come on, let's get you into your seat and you'll eat like you've never eaten before.
Abby helped Autumn into a seat near the head of the longest table. Soon enough, he had a heaping pile of food in front of him, along with a selection of drinks, everything from Nuka-Cola to moonshine. As the party really got started, he was joined by many other members of the community, talking, drinking, eating, before heading out to the dance floor and back again. The 2 seats at the head of the table were still empty, as the mayor and Eugenie hadn't made their entrance yet.
Not like those two to be fashionably late, but they also haven't seen each other for weeks. I expect that they have a bit of catching up to do.
That had gotten a chuckle from the other ghouls. And right about that time, Autumn caught sight of the 2 of them walking up the street towards them, hand in hand. The mayor was wearing a green laundered dress, while Eugenie had on a casual shirt and slacks. Even Autumn had to admit that they made a striking couple. The party quieted down as the mayor pulled out Eugenie's chair for her to sit, before standing beside her, hand on her shoulder.
You're probably wondering why I called you all here tonight. But seriously, tonight is a cause for celebration. Both Eugenie and I are so happy to see how our little community has not only survived, but thrived over these long years. Each and every one of you are part of our family, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So tonight, we celebrate the success of our trading business. As you know, the Blue Ridge Caravan renewed our contract. But there were a couple of surprise bonuses. First, they've also made us full and equal partners on the caravan routes to eastern Tennessee. On top of that, we've been given the rights to establish our own trading posts with a very generous split of the profits. Not only will this allow us to continue to expand, but we'll be able to connect with more ghoul communities down south. Of course, this means more work, but it also means more opportunity, and makes our place in the world that much more secure, even as humanity is still recovering from its adolescence. But thanks to all of your efforts, including, in no small part, those of my increasingly perfect wife, I know that we will have much more to celebrate for a long time to come.
It could be hard to tell when a ghoul blushed, but Eugenie made a solid effort.
And lastly, we celebrate the recovery of our guest, Mr. Autumn. We rarely receive visitors, which reminds me, I still wanted to apologize for my sister's last visit. Judith, I have the parts to replace your dough press. I had no idea what she was planning.
What happened, Abby?
Long story.
Anyway, thank you all for showing time and again that even if the world's broken, good people can always be found, if you look beneath the surface. But by now, I've used up half a year's safe dosage of public speaking, so everyone, please enjoy yourselves. Time for food, drink, and music.
The band took the opportunity to kick off a real toe-tapping tune that got the party moving and the people back to dancing. As the sun set over the hills and the lights of the community came on, Autumn was presented with plate after plate of food, along with plenty to drink as the town all socialized around him. Both the mayor and Eugenie were mostly the center of attention, as folks came to shake their hands and talk. It was nearly impossible to catch all of the conversations, but it was clear that those two were the pillars of the community. After eating, Autumn watched Eugenie drag the mayor out onto the dance floor, and while the mayor pretended at reluctance, it wasn't long before she was cutting a rug with the best of them. As the band switched to a slower tune, the two held each other close in their arms as they gently swayed to the music. Autumn could tell that the women were deeply in love with each other, something he himself had never had the occasion to experience at all, let alone the timescale of a pair of ghouls might achieve. Likely as close to literally happily ever after as one might get, given the town's name. Slow to getting lost in his thoughts again, Autumn was brought back to reality when Abby saddled up next to her and put another beer on the table.
Cap for your thoughts?
You know, you've never asked who I was, or where I came from, or what happened. I mean, what really happened.
Abby gave him a sad little smile.
Autumn, if you haven't noticed, we're all from somewhere else. Nobody gets born here, so we all got a past. But what we have is the here and now. It doesn't take a scientist or a genius to figure out you came from the Capital Wasteland. We may be in an out-of-the-way corner of the world, but the mayor keeps tabs on things. For good reason.
Autumn was about to say something, but Abby interrupted him.
We can talk about it later. Tonight is a celebration. I'm alive, you're alive, and I definitely have not had enough to drink yet.
And with that, Abby clinked their bottles together and kicked back on her feet to watch the festivities. The next couple of hours were a blur of food, booze, and more music. It wasn't until around midnight that the party started to die down. Folks had started to depart, with only a few diehards still keeping the party going. Abby had gotten rather tipsy and apologized before stumbling back in the direction of her house. Feeling exhausted and tipsy himself, Autumn took his crutches, said his goodbyes to the few remaining guests, and managed to start limping back to his room. About halfway there, one of the crutches got caught on a rock and he found himself falling. But before he could hit the ground, someone grabbed his arm, saving him from a very likely re-injury.
Whoa there. You need to be more careful. Adjusting to impairments can take some time.
Until he felt a grip on his arm, he hadn't even known anyone was there. But it was the mayor. She steadied him up on his feet before releasing his arm, and they ended up face to face. In the flickering of the lights, she looked eerily familiar. Something about the way she carried herself. The woman regarded him with her one good eye before reaching down and picking up the crutch and handing it back to him.
You don't want to lose this, at least not until you're ready.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor.
She nodded and watched as Autumn made his way back towards his room. He felt her eye upon him, even as he finally limped out of sight. On the way, he passed that locked shed, and once again his curiosity was piqued.
Just who are you?
2 more weeks had gone by since the party. The town had settled into a new routine as Eugenie supervised distribution of the newly arrived supplies, along with any of the personally requested items, while the mayor had been busy making arrangements for the new caravans and planning where to build their new trading posts over the coming year. For Autumn, the biggest change was getting out of his leg cast, and better yet, finally being rid of those horrid crutches. It would take some time to fully recover, but he could get around on his own now with only the use of a cane. Abby had bought him one. A gift, she said. It had been handmade at the local wood shop, with a carved head of a creature he'd never seen before.
It's called a sheep squatch.
Oh, what now?
A cryptid from back in the day. We like to think of it as a good luck charm.
Well, then, I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Walking along with his cane, Autumn had tried to get a better look at his surroundings. The purple glow on the horizon to the south, that place Abby had called the Ultrasite Waste, had gotten him asking questions. However, whenever he posed one to someone in town about what had happened or what was out there, they all did their level best to change the subject. Finally, Autumn had pressed Abby, and she relented, packing a picnic lunch and taking Autumn outside of the gate and down the trail, about halfway down the hill to a small outcrop overlooking the valley below. Sitting them both underneath a tree, Abby unpacked their food while Autumn turned his gaze to the horizon. Below them, the trees continued for some distance until they faded into a grayish-purple haze and jagged peaks. It looked like a bleak and blasted landscape.
Abby, what happened here?
Abby unwrapped a sandwich and handed it to Autumn, before taking a deep breath and wiping a tear from her eye.
I told you I came from Appalachia, running from a nasty plague and even nastier monsters.
You did?
That was nothing compared to what came later. You see, there were new folks, vaulters, a lot of them, who fought those monsters. They wiped out the plague, killed the monsters, and they thought the worst was over. But they were wrong. They were all wrong. We don't talk about it much, because of what happened. Because of what some folks had to do, to stop what was coming.
And what was coming?
The end of the world. I know that sounds silly after the Great War, and this wasteland we find ourselves in, but it would have turned what happened back then into just the opening act on something far, far worse. So the only way to stop it was to destroy it. All of it. There's nothing left there but death. Anyone, well, with 1 or 2 exceptions, that goes into the fog, well, they don't come out again. Whether they be scavengers or just the curious folks that just want to see what's on the other side. If the radiation doesn't kill them, whatever creatures still crawl through the ruins certainly do.
Why haven't I ever heard of this?
Probably because people don't really want to remember. I was there, both the first time Appalachia died and the second. And I saw more than I ever wanted to see. Enough to still give me nightmares all these years later.
Abby wiped the tears from her face.
So we send our people north, east, west, but never straight south. You're really lucky. You could have crashed in the middle of that hellscape, and that's something I would never wish on anyone. All of that destruction out there. It's a reminder of what was, and it could have been so much worse, too.
It sounds awful. It truly does.
Abby looked off into the distance, then glanced back at Autumn.
You're going to leave soon, aren't you?
The question caught him by surprise.
How did you know?
I can see it in your eyes. You have that wandering look about you. And I suspect there are places you need to be.
I don't know where I belong anymore, Abby. All I do know is that I can't stay here. Knowing who I am, it could be putting you all in danger.
Abby gave Autumn a sad little smile and rested her head on his shoulder. They finished the rest of their meal in silence before heading back to the settlement. Abby had given him a hug before she went back to her own house, getting him to promise to tell her before he decided to leave for good. He made a side trip to the barber, where he finally cut his hair, but kept the beard. It helped hide some of the scars, but mostly it just made him feel different. And right now, different felt good. Finally walking back to his little guest house, and since he was leaving soon anyway, Autumn decided to act on his curiosity too, for old time's sake.
Greetings, people of Earth. My name is Shmo Brannigan. I have hacked into this RSS feed with a promotional feature for the Wizard Scroll podcast, transcribing in 3, 2, 1.
Hold on, let me unfurl this wizard scroll real quick.
I'm free! I'm finally free!
Bob, is that you?
Ugh, I ain't your mom anymore, kid. I'm a skeleton now. Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Jerry. Smell you later, loser. I hate my life!
Holy crap, wrong half. We've talked about this 17 times already. Your constant outbursts are not freaking sweet at all, and they need to stop.
Hello. Welcome to the Sorcerer's Slice. Can I get a name for the order?
Kid, you gotta make the order. They don't let me come here anymore.
What?
I was banned from coming here 74 years ago for cutting bad checks. Please, they'll recognize my voice. You have to order.
All right, fine.
The Wizard Scroll is available on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, and wherever else fine podcasts are found. This concludes today's promotional feature.
Later that night, Autumn crept out of the guest house. The town was quiet, with the exception of a light breeze and the sound of insects. In the darkness, he slipped around the few buildings in his way and ended up in front of the locked shack. It had been a while since he had picked the lock, but at one time, he had been quite good at it. He took out a bobby pin and screwdriver and worked his way through each of the 3 locks holding the sturdy door closed. He managed the first without breaking a bobby pin, but broke 2 trying to jimmy the second, anxiously looking around in case someone happened to hear him, before finally getting through the 3rd. Autumn reached down and turned the handle. The click was loud in the silent night, and he paused, waiting to see if he had been discovered, but nothing in the settlement stirred. Slowly slipping inside, Autumn found himself in a larger space than he expected. The shed backed up against the side of the hill, and it opened into what must have been a small cavern. He couldn't see much in the dark, so he pulled out a small flashlight he had concealed in his pocket.
I wonder what secrets the mayor is hiding in here.
In front of him was a small alcove, with something covered in a large tarp, and to the right there was a rack of clothes and boxes underneath, while to his left there were more boxes and crates, all gathering copious amounts of dust. He shined the flashlight at the tarp, then put his hand on it. Whatever was underneath was big, and by the feel of it, metal. Now extremely curious, Autumn reached up and grabbed the end of the tarp, pulling it down.
It can't be.
Autumn was dumbstruck by what he had just discovered. There, covered in the dust of decades, was a full suit of Exo-1 experimental power armor. He'd seen pictures of the old models in the Enclave technical guides, and it had been used in the early years, right after the Great War, before it had been replaced by more advanced models.
What in the hell?
What had made his discovery even more surprising was the emblem on the armor's chest. It was the official emblem of the Enclave. He ran his hand along the torso of the armor. It was in very good condition, despite some gouges in the armor, probably made by heavy weapons fire.
Just how did something like this end up in here?
Hoping to find more information, Autumn turned from the armor and walked over to the rack and examined the clothes hanging there. His mouth nearly dropped open when he put his hand on a uniform, an Enclave uniform. It was old, much older in a style he'd never actually seen before, but the insignia was a dead giveaway. There wasn't just one here either. There were several, all hung together, with officers' caps and berets on the top shelf. Looking below them in the boxes, Autumn found technical manuals, field guides, and binders, all with Enclave labels. There was a storage locker with an Enclave plasma rifle, unloaded but fully functional, and on top of another box was what looked like a scrapbook. He picked it up and leafed through it. There were pictures of a striking young woman with dark hair in a modified Enclave officer's uniform. This one was blue with a different emblem on its shoulder. It looked like a variation of the Enclave's, but appeared to be combined with the Vault-Tec logo as well. There were other pictures of more Enclave soldiers, all in front of what looked like some kind of fancy resort, and another large group picture in front of some kind of flying monster. He'd have called it a dragon if it hadn't been an illustration in a children's book and not an actual photograph. There were still others, in a bunker, showing off suits of power armor, weapons, and even some kind of mainframe, eerily similar to Eden's old complex in Raven Rock. 2 pictures fell out of the binder and ended up on the ground. Autumn picked them up. The first was one of the same young woman, but here she was in a wheelchair, covered in bandages, scowling deeply, with someone behind her in what seemed like an unfamiliar nurse's uniform and wearing a bizarre plague doctor mask. The second was a portrait. The young woman now sporting an eye patch, another woman with dark, closely cropped hair and some kind of face paint, sticking her tongue out at the camera, and an older man behind them with his arms around them, together. They looked very much like a father and his daughters, even if there was no obvious familiar resemblance between them. Someone cleared their throat behind him, catching Autumn off guard. Whoever it was hadn't made a sound until that moment.
I suspected it was only a matter of time before you went snooping. I probably would have done the same thing had I been in your shoes. Though I'd have checked for silent alarms.
It was the mayor, standing in the doorway of the shed. She was wearing a tattered field jacket and an old cowboy hat. Autumn slipped the picture back into the binder and set it down on the box.
My apologies. I didn't mean to pry. Well, I did, but not to offend. But I have to ask, where did you get all of this?
The mayor gave him a wry smile.
It's all mine, of course, or duplicates, some of it, though collecting it here took quite a long time.
But this belongs to the Enclave. All of it. Who are you?
Once, a long time ago, I was Colonel Valeria Faustina, commander of the new Enclave in Appalachia. But I really prefer just Val.
Who? And new Enclave? I feel like I've fallen down the rabbit hole.
It's a long story, Mr. or since we're showing our cards, Colonel Augustus Autumn. Abby probably told you that I tend to keep track of details that could affect our people here.
You know who I am. Wait, you've always known, haven't you?
Like I said, I tend to keep tabs on events and people. And I've been watching you, from a distance, of course. I wanted to see what you'd do.
Abby, the others spying on me?
Not spying, per se. I asked them to keep an eye on you, just as we would any guest. Not everyone respects hospitality.
And do they know who I am?
Abby does, but she doesn't know what I do. She doesn't know what you've done, what the Enclave truly represents.
I've done horrible things. Nothing I say can change that.
Colonel, that is the story of the Wasteland.
So, if you know who I am and what I've done, why didn't you just kill me? Why don't you kill me now?
Because I needed to know what you'd do. Our community represents everything you were taught to hate, yet we all put ourselves at risk helping you.
That's true. Ghouls are an abomination, as are all the mutations of the Wasteland. And that's how I was trained. What I always believed.
And what do you believe now, Colonel? Are my people, my family, safer with you in the world or out of it? Is the world?
The mayor showed no overt threat. There was a knife strapped to her hip, but her hands were relaxed at her sides. But again, something in her bearing, that fixed stare of her eye, suggested that this question was far from idle. Autumn was embarrassed, but the question was the correct one. In different circumstances, he wouldn't have hesitated to call in a vertibird strike and Cygna Epsilon squad to burn the place to the ground and exterminate the inhabitants like so many vermin. But he didn't feel like that man anymore. Perhaps he did die in that vertibird crash. Maybe he should have. Autumn took a deep breath, then looked the mayor in the eye.
I would never hurt my friends.
For a timeless moment, Autumn felt himself weighed and measured by centuries of experience, then saw the mayor visibly relax, putting her hand on her hip and giving him a sly smile.
I'd hoped so. And in that case, it appears that you and I need to talk a bit more. Follow me.
Autumn let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, and took one last look around. The weight of history clung to the artifacts here, and he could almost hear the whispers of untold stories coming from the boxes and crates he was surrounded by. Beyond just healing, in more than one sense, there was a deeper reason he was here, and now he might have the opportunity to learn what it was. He walked out past the mayor, cane in hand, and found Eugenie standing there as well. She had her hand on her hip and whistled.
Damn, Val, right again. Always did have a knack for sussing out the curious ones. I owe you a back rub later. For now, everyone up for a nightcap?
I think I could use a drink. Or 3.
After what I'm about to tell you, that might not be enough.
The three of them walked down the quiet streets to where the mayor's house was located. It was one of the larger residences with a wide front porch. Crossing the threshold, Autumn found himself in a large library and trophy room. Like his guest house, the upper walls were decorated with more mounted parts of wasteland creatures, most of whom Autumn had never seen before, and including some terrifying fish. Below bookcases lined the walls stood crammed with books of all kinds, including an even wider collection of literary classics and military manuals than the guest house had been stocked with.
Please, take a seat, Colonel. Eugenie, I think we have some old possum left. Why don't you get a few for us?
Val took off her hat and hung it on the coat rack, followed by her tattered field jacket. She walked over and sat down on one of the lounge chairs in front of the small fireplace.
Anything for you, love. But you know those are as rare as hen's teeth now, right?
Eugenie winked and walked into the other room. Autumn settled into the other chair, putting his cane across his lap, while Val stretched and itched the side of her face.
First things first, you can just call me Val. And I'll just call you Autumn. No reason for friends to stand on pomp and circumstance.
Friends?
Provisionally. I think you need all the friends you can get, Autumn. But I like to think I'm a pretty good judge of character by now, and I also believe you and I have a lot in common.
The Enclave.
That's only part of it. You and I both have done terrible things because we believed it was the right thing to do. We justified our actions on the righteousness of our cause, on the dream of what it was supposed to bring back. And yes, as soldiers, we were following orders. But everything we did was based on a lie.
Ours is not to reason why. Ours is but to do and die.
There is a lot of wisdom in those old books. I wished I'd spent more time understanding them rather than just reading them. By the time I realized my own mistakes, it was far too late to entirely salvage things. Now, every time I look out my window, I witness the sins of my past.
The ultrasite wastes?
That's my curse, Autumn. In doing what I thought, no, what I knew was right, I left myself no other option but to become the instrument of death. To save the world, I had to make a terrible choice. Sacrifice thousands, tens of thousands, to save 1 billion.
Don't mourn the dead. Honor them. But mourn for those who have to live with what they have done.
A bit of poetic justice, if there is such a thing. After I destroyed Appalachia, I was left in the rubble. I couldn't tell you why I survived the explosion itself or even how. Considering everything, I don't really believe in a higher power, so pure dumb luck, I guess. But I absorbed enough radiation to kill someone 1,000 times over. Lil, my sister, found me and brought me here.
Val ran her fingers over her face, brooding for a moment.
I woke up a week later, and I've been here ever since, trying to make up for the past.
Is Val being Miss Grumpy Pants again?
Eugenie returned from the kitchen with 3 beer bottles in her hand and a smile on her face.
Jeannie, that's really not...
I will apologize for my wife, Mr. Autumn. She has been practicing that speech for quite a while.
Jeannie! I didn't... It's not... Look, for people stuff, I need all the help I can get.
Eugenie leaned down and gave her wife a kiss, then handed her one of the beers, before reaching over and handing the other to Autumn. Then she sat down herself next to Val.
Underneath all this grim and stoic exterior, Mr. Autumn, Val has the kindest heart you'll ever find. Anywhere.
Val might have blushed, just a little, then clinked her bottle against Eugenie's, before doing the same to Autumn's. Then took a drink, taking a longer pull than she might have to regain her composure, but also muse a bit on kind hearts.
Nothing beats an ice-cold old possum. If we're that low, I guess we could see if Red can scrounge up a few more for us. Or better yet, finally get us that recipe.
How cost you, Val? You know how she is about her liquor.
Oh, I know. Maybe she can license it to the Stein and Dine and get royalties, whatever. But it's far past time for a visit to Tennessee. But back to my story. Thanks to a lot of luck, help, and family, I survived. But my old life was gone forever, and I had to find a way to live with what I'd done.
You didn't do half bad, Val. Not half bad at all.
I couldn't have done it without you, Jeannie. You helped me hold on to myself, the parts worth holding on to, and let the other bits go. Taught me how I could live again, and gave me a purpose. So, Autumn, I've lived here, protected my people, helped them thrive, and stood watch. Abby told you we warn people away when they get curious or greedy. I save as many as I can, but the waste still extracts its pound of flesh, and it's a risk every time I set foot in there.
But what does all of this have to do with me?
The world is broken, and so are we. But if we can learn, really learn, it doesn't have to stay that way. I heard about what happened in the Capital Wasteland, but I want to hear your story. Not rumors, not the propaganda. I want you to tell me the truth. All of it.
Autumn took a long sip of his beer, then sat it on the table. He gazed into the fire, collecting his thoughts before beginning his story.
It all started a long time ago, on the Poseidon oil rig.
Autumn started all the way back to his childhood and his father. He talked about what had happened to the Enclave before, including the disaster at the oil rig, then the migration to Raven Rock, and when he described President Eaton, he could see a pained look come over Val's face, and Eugenie squeezed her hand. From there, he described the water purifier and the battles with the Brotherhood of Steel, and ended with the fight at Adams Air Force Base. The whole story unfolded over the course of several hours, with Eugenie making her rounds back to the kitchen to bring them all more bottles of Old Possum. Throughout his tale, Val paid rapt attention. She would ask a pointed question or make a comment at a key juncture, and he could tell that certain parts of his story hit home, especially seeing the twitch in her face when he talked about Eden's betrayal.
I had no idea. I thought it was doing the right thing, but Eden was insane. Completely and utterly insane.
The road to both of our hells was paved with good intentions.
Autumn just nodded, then continued his story. He finally wrapped up the whole tale, just as the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon.
Well, Autumn, we have even more in common than I first suspected. Jeannie, mind getting breakfast started? I still have some things I want to discuss with our guest.
Eugenie got up and leaned over, kissing her wife.
Sure thing. I'll be back in 2 shakes of a mole rat's tail, my love.
Val leaned back in her chair again.
Autumn, the souvenirs I keep from my old life help remind me of an old saying, that war never changes.
I've heard that as well.
But I've learned something across all of these years of my own self-imposed exile. It doesn't matter if war never changes, because I believe that we can change. We, humanity, and my definition of that is broader than just you and I, have an opportunity to do better, to finally get out of our awkward adolescence and grow up.
Autumn saw a tear in the corner of Val's eye.
Colonel Valeria Faustina and the Enclave she represented were a remnant of the old world that could only perpetuate the cycle of violence and control. But the Wasteland also has a habit of stripping things away to their most real, of giving folks a second chance. I finally found someone I could love with all of my heart and soul, a family I could protect. Although I say living with myself is my curse, this is my blessing as well.
It sounds like you got lucky.
Luck had nothing to do with it.
Luck had plenty to do with it, but mostly wanting to change and gratitude for all the help. But that's enough about the past. I want to talk about your future.
My future? Well, to be honest, I don't know where to start.
That's why I'm here, and I think that's why you had good fortune when you landed on my doorstep. You see, I know what you've lost. I feel it, but I believe in the potential of what you can be, of what you can become, especially at this particular moment in your life.
Val got up from her chair and walked over to one of the bookcases. She grabbed 3 thick volumes and brought them over, placing them on the table in front of Autumn.
While, aside from the rare outing, I may have exiled myself here, that doesn't mean I haven't been keeping tabs on what's going on in the Wasteland over the years. I have contacts from all over, people that owe me favors, or vice versa, people who are sympathetic to the idea of a better future. To rebuild this shattered world, we need to look beyond the narrow ideologies of the Enclave, the Brotherhood of Steel, or whatever is rising in the West.
Val reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Autumn, who opened it. It was a map of a settlement bordering a large body of water.
There is another option. There are people who have come together to build something new, ambitious in scope, but also in ideals. Former members from almost every faction in the Wasteland, Enclave, Brotherhood, Raiders, and many more, united under a common banner.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
At any other time, I would say it was. We've all seen it, yet another rising power in the Wasteland, spreading more chaos in the name of control. But these people are dedicated to the proposition that this country can be what it was meant to be. Of the people, by the people, and for the people, to invoke wise words once uttered in the midst of another national tragedy. But they need I'd say leader, but I really mean navigator.
But why me? You hardly know me.
Because you are where I once was. I lost everything because of the choices I made, but I can give you a second chance. I want you to take my story, learn from both of our mistakes, and do better. be someone who knows, who can feel what it means to take the wrong road and use that to find another one.
Val stood up and extended her hand.
The future can be what it ought to be, Augustus Autumn, if you have the stomach for it.
At that moment, Eugenie called from the kitchen.
Not to interrupt, but breakfast is ready.
I know, it's a lot to take in, and we can talk more over some food so you can hear the entire story, and after, discuss the future.
Autumn took her hand and shook it.
Thank you. Thank you for...
As words failed Autumn, Val just nodded, smiled, and got up to follow the delightful smells emanating from the kitchen. Autumn looked down at the books in front of him and picked up the first volume. The covers were dusty, but he could still clearly read the title.
The Modus Files, Volume 1.
Autumn put the book down and walked towards the kitchen. The gloom of the past had finally receded, and his mind was full of possibilities. For the first time in such a long time, he felt hope.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
Thank you again, members, for joining us here on The Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe. Better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on our various social media accounts, including Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram, @Modus Files or @Modus Files Podcast, for more information about our story and characters, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. We also have a Patreon if you'd like to support our work and receive special benefits like early access to episodes, original scripts, and special events with our cast. A link to our Patreon can be found at modusfiles.com. I'd also like to thank our cast, Bandora Beatrix as Valeria Faustina, or Mrs. Mayor when she feels like it, Dr. Mark Harsworth as Colonel Augustus Autumn, Fire Writer as Eugenie, Mandy Marie B. as Abigail Singh, Chrissy Williams as Judith the Baker, Preston Harden as John the Ghoul, and a special thank you to Brad Williams, who has been a cornerstone of our story for the past 3 seasons as the voice of Modus. We started writing the Modus Files more than 6 years ago as a way to express our creativity and expand the stories and lore of Fallout, but we never expected it would turn into a podcast beloved by so many. With a cast totaling more than 100 credited voice actors, both amateur and professional, we have to give them all a very special thank you for being part of this incredible endeavor. With your voices and encouragement, you've helped create a living, breathing world populated by our cast of characters. As our tale has grown over the past 3 seasons, it's been an amazing experience to see the story evolve over time, taking on a grand scale, but grounded in the lives and decisions of our characters. We hope that you've enjoyed following our characters as they've struggled to find their way in a broken world, as much as we've enjoyed bringing them to life for you. And while the curtain has come down on the story of Appalachia, the tales of the Modus Files will go on. Our 4th season will follow Trader Red as she travels back home to face the ghosts of the past and a reckoning in the Tennessee hills. Stay tuned for our next season, The Modus Files presents The Ballad of Trader Red. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. We couldn't have done this without all of you. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.